So, I'm back with another one of these rants. I made a video a little while back along the lines of TRT doesn't take time to work, it takes time to do the work. And I stand by that. I think that's quite clever. But it doesn't answer the fucking question of how long does TRT take to work, does it? It just answers the question with more questions. So, I thought I'd actually answer that question today. And it's going to take me 15 minutes to answer it. 15 minutes to answer it, like it always does. But I will try to provide as much concise value as I can in as short a space of a time possible. So, as you would know if you've been watching me for some time, or if you've been in the TRT space and been exposed to the hordes of troubleshooting issues that people are having, you would have come across the notion that people need to be patient with TRT taking time to work. And this is fundamentally critical. One of the primary reasons why people's expectations are not met when they start TRT, fumbling my words tonight, is that they have this expectation or this false idea, which may have been instilled in them by their provider, that once they get their testosterone levels up to whatever optimal is decided to be, that they will then feel optimal, quote unquote optimal, right? And this is a pretty fair expectation if you consider how other medicines work. Once you reach peak concentrations in the blood, you should be receiving somewhere close to maximal therapeutic benefit. However, this is not the case. And the reason why this is not the case is that there are different categories of benefits that come from TRT. And the acute benefits of increased testosterone are only a very small fraction of the total pie that is the benefits of TRT. And in my opinion, the primary benefit of TRT comes from chronic exposure to androgens. So I like to break things down into three major milestones, and there's probably a few more milestones in between, but I like things in threes. Previously, I used to say it was 6 weeks, 6 months, and 6 years, but that sounds a little bit satanic, and there's enough satanic shit going on in the world today. So let's say 7 weeks, 7 months, and 7 years, or 5 weeks, 5 months, and 5 years. You get the point. And one of the issues that I think people have is they're expecting the outcome that they're going to get after 5, 6, 7 years at 5, 6, 7 weeks. Or, secondly, if people are a bit more generous with their expectations, they are expecting the outcomes that they're going to have at 5, 6, 7 years at 5, 6, or 7 months. And this is not how it works. Similarly to puberty, if a teenage boy comes home and he is 6 months after starting puberty and he is complaining that he is not a full-fledged adult, big, hairy man, we'd laugh and we'd say, son, that's going to take time. You're just a teenager. You've got to be patient with growing up. TRT is the same. It takes years to get the effects of chronic exposure to androgens, not just in terms of what it's doing biologically, but also what it's going to be doing psychologically. I think a big therapeutic component, which is not really discussed in this space, is that things change when your perceived baseline of who you are and your experience of life is that of a high testosterone man. I think that when this is all new and novel, even when you are stable, it still takes time to undo these negative thought pathways, but also to potentially undo or redo the shitty decisions that you've made or the avoidant or procrastinating personality traits that you've adopted, or the negative outcomes of a poor diet and lifestyle, or maybe succumbing to vices more than you should, as a result of the fact that you're a human being who felt like shit for a while and you self medicated just like everyone else does because you're not perfect and that's okay. I think there needs to be compassion and empathy for that because we've all been there. So, in terms of how long does it take to actually achieve the benefits of TRT, it takes years. But I like to think that all markers should have moved at least somewhat in a positive direction by 6 to 12 months. So, the way I explain it to my clients is this, and feel free if you're a provider or a health coach, copy and paste this, steal this, take this to your clients too, because I think it's true. At the 12-week mark, 8 to 12 weeks, when you would be first getting your follow-up blood test to see where your levels have settled in and having your first follow-up discussion with your provider, potentially after you've made 100 fucking Facebook posts in groups trying to solicit help or advice from strangers, which has led you nowhere. That's a waste of time. You should be feeling, ideally, if you have responded typically to your treatment and you're not an outlier, you should be feeling 10 to 20% better than you felt before you started. That's it. Now, that's not a huge improvement. If you felt like dog shit before you started, that's I feel a little bit shit now. That's an improvement. That's a 10 to 20% improvement. If you went from I felt like dog shit to I feel okay or good, that's like a 30 to 40% improvement. You should be happy and grateful for that, not disappointed that you don't feel like $1,000,000. And this is because it takes time for the body to get with the program. Your body is blind. It had no idea that you were about to come in with a pointy needle or some cream to rub on your ball sack and that you were going to increase your testosterone levels by 2, 3, or 4-fold. It had no idea. And when you did that, it is going to take so long for those effects to actually be fully fulfilled in your biology as well as in your psychology. And that's fine because this is a marathon, not a sprint. Hormone optimization therapy is for the rest of your life. This is not correcting a short term problem. And if you are correcting a hypergonadal state, which was present for years or even decades, it may take years to actually get to the point that you're feeling A-OK, and that's fine. The next marker I like to look at is that 5, 6, 7 month mark. And this is often your second follow-up appointment or potentially your third if you were titrating and tweaking things a little bit more. And at this point, and only at this point, I like to set the expectation that, let's say if we have a bar graph and there are bars for each different area of benefit that we are hoping to achieve with TRT. Maybe it's sexual performance, mood, sleep, energy levels, confidence, anxiety, depression, mental health, whatever. And each of these are a bar graph. They're all going to move differently. They're all going to ebb and flow. One might peak up immediately. You might get a bit of a honeymoon effect. You might get a little bit of a elation, a bit of a euphoria when you start. And then maybe I don't know, maybe that drops off and then you start to feel a bit more confident, a bit less anxiety, maybe going through the motions of just actually feeling in control of yourself for a few weeks or a couple of months. That starts to give you a bit more confidence. You start to develop a bit more competence in who you are. All of these graphs should start to move, but the last one that will often move after the honeymoon period is over is libido and sexual benefits. And this is because the way that the human body works, we prioritize survival and reproduction comes last. Now, in your mind, you might want to be raging horny all the time, and that's your number one priority. Your body may not see the world the same way that you do. So, reproduction comes last, survival comes first. So, it makes sense that sexual function and libido is going to come last, no pun intended, in this series of events. So I like to think at 6 to 12 months, this is when all of those bars should have started moving. They're not all going to be at 100 though. Now, some of them might be close to, or you might be at 100. If you were in fantastic health before you started TRT and just your testosterone was a bit off, then yeah, maybe at 6 to 12 months, maybe 12 months to be more realistic, yeah, maybe they'll be close to 100. Maybe they'll be 70, 80%. And if you were particularly off track before you started, maybe they're all only coming up a little bit. But again, if you're at 6 to 12 months and you went from feeling like dog shit to feeling kind of okay, that is a massive amount of progress. And that is something that people should be celebrating, not worrying about, and having their expectations let down, because this is something that's going to take time. And my biggest piece of wisdom that I would like to instill on everyone watching is that if you get your free testosterone up to, whatever, let's say 1,000, you're taking like 150, 175 milligrams of testosterone a week, whatever, and you get your blood work done and you've reached that level, that testosterone is not going to have the same effect on you today as it will when you've been using it chronically for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So, how you're feeling today and what those levels are looking like, if you're sitting there going, well, I've got my testosterone up to this much, but I still don't feel like, Dwayne Johnson in Skyscraper. I just kind of feel like just kind of like me, but maybe I've got a bit more energy and a bit more spark. That's great. That's not a problem. That's great, because this is not representing the end goal of treatment. This is representing early days of treatment. And the solution, might you need to up the dose? Maybe, circumstantially. That could be you. That could be something that you need to discuss with your provider. But what is commonly needed is people not rushing to up the dose after the first few months, but giving that dose time to settle in and potentially looking at titrating it up down the track. But most importantly, recognizing that the effect of a certain dose at 3 to 6 months is not going to be the same as at 3 to 6 years, because it takes the body time to chronically be exposed to androgens and actually get that therapeutic effect that we are looking for, because the body can only change so quickly and it can only undo damage so quickly, and you can only metamorphosize and turn into the person that you're going to be, or that you want to be, or that you're working towards being, I would hope, so quickly. We are only capable of change so quickly. And the more work you do and the more effort you put in, the more you will be able to expedite this process. Or a better way of looking at it, because you can only do so much work, it's kind of like how hard you work will allow you to kind of break through plateaus. So if you're only going to put a small amount of effort into your diet and lifestyle, and you give testosterone 3, 4, 5 years to work, you might be able to reach 60% of your potential. But if you put more work in, maybe you start getting up earlier and going for a walk every day, and maybe you stop eating junk food for dessert and you cut out the beers, then giving that the same amount of time, you will now be able to reach a higher plateau. My camera's gone blurry because I moved too much. It'll refocus. You know what I look like at this point. So the point that I'm making here is that it's a combination of time and work that needs to be put into testosterone. But the most important thing is understanding that how you're feeling after the first few months, and maybe even how you're feeling after 6 to 12 months, it is an impossible reality. It is a fictitious, completely fictitious expectation that you could possibly be where you're going to be in 5 years' time after 12 months. So be patient. If things are starting to improve, just like my focus improved there, that was not intentional, but it worked well. If things are starting to improve at 6 to 12 months and you're starting to make progress, celebrate how far you've come, not how far you are away from where you want to be, because otherwise you're just going to be discouraged rather than grateful. And it's not really going to change the objective circumstances. It's just going to make you fucking miserable. And that doesn't help anyone, especially not you. So start to measure your progress in months, not weeks. And if you can start to measure your progress in months and have realistic expectations and going, okay, as long as I'm continuing to improve and continuing to get better and continuing to make progress, and I have realistic expectations that this is going to be a multiple year journey rather than a multiple month journey, then I think you'll be okay. And I think a lot of the time, the anxiety and the panic and the fear when it comes to TRT are guys in the first 2, 3, maybe even 6 months feeling like the treatment didn't meet their expectations simply because they were impatient. And as someone who's been on this now for like 7 years, I still notice new benefits every year. And the more I look after myself and the more work I do, and the more I do the things I know I should be doing and not do the things I know I shouldn't be doing, which is fundamentally key, the more those results seem to compound over time. So I hope that helped.